Donald Trump held a press conference to answer questions about his abrupt decision to pull US forces out of northern Syria. Now that, of course, effectively left our Kurdish allies abandoned to fend for themselves against Turkish provocations. And Trump has decided he's gonna double down and he's gonna defend his decision. Let's take a look.
We only have 50 people in that area. That's a small sector. And I don't want those 50 people hurt or killed or anything. I don't want anything bad to happen to our people. And I told that to President Erdoğan. I said, don't hurt any of our people get hurt. Big trouble. But I have told Turkey that if they do anything outside of what we would think is humane, to use the word a second time, we talk about Hong Kong, we talk about this, they could suffer the wrath of an extremely decimated economy. And I've done it once. I did it with Pastor Brunson. You remember the Pastor Brunson? And they wouldn't give Pastor Brunson back, and they ended up giving Pastor Brunson back pretty quickly. Their currency fell at record levels, and lots of other things happened.
So I don't know what he's specifically talking about when he references 50 troops, but just to be clear, we have more than 50 troops in that area. We have as many as 1,000 US troops in that area who are now coming back to the US.
So look, if you try to dissect every part of his madness, it'll take up the whole 3-hour live show. So Pastor Brunson was something that happened earlier. He did apply pressure. Did it single-handedly sink the Turkish economy? Decimated, suffered a wrath? No, but did it affect the Turkish economy? Yes. So that would be a point of concern for them. But the main thing I took from that was, now we told them, now you gotta know limits. You have to be humane. Humane, Donald Trump. Donald Trump has said that we should kill the family members of so-called terrorists. Well, how do you even know if they're terrorists? I mean, a lot of the drone strikes are not, you don't even, a lot of them are based on signals. They're not even based on human intelligence. So you not only kill people you don't know, but you kill the family members of the people you don't know. And we're supposed to rely on Donald Trump's definition of what is humane to provide a check on the Turkish incursion into Kurdish territory. And the Turks are supposed to know, hey, don't mess with Donald Trump. I mean, if you are too inhumane to the Kurds, by Trump's definition, then he'll do economic damage to us.
Yeah.
That means absolutely nothing.
You can't trust Trump to be humane himself, as we know, and he's decided to defend Saudi Arabia, which literally ordered the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. But anyway, there's that.
And by the way, they did that in Turkey, in a Saudi embassy in Turkey. And so Turkey has firsthand knowledge that Donald Trump thinks dismembering someone is not too inhumane.
And aside from Donald Trump's own defense of inhumane behavior, there's also the fact that he doesn't know anything, that he is ignorant when it comes to these issues. And if you don't believe me, I think this next video will summarize it pretty perfectly. Take a look.
The Kurds themselves have lost thousands of fighters in battling ISIS.
And we've lost a lot of fighters.
Can you guarantee their safety?
Well, we're going to try. If you look at some of the Kurds, as you know, that's a natural enemy of Turkey. Specifically, as I said, I mean, they have natural enemies. They've been fighting each other for, somebody said today, hundreds of years. I mean, one historian said they've been fighting for hundreds of years. We interject ourselves into wars, and we interject ourselves into tribal wars and revolutions and all these things that are very, they're not the kind of thing that you settle the way we'd like to see it settled. It just doesn't work that way. But hopefully that'll all be very strong and strongly done.
Well, I'm glad that he's being specific in that answer. Makes me feel a lot better about the abrupt decisions that he made right after a phone call with the Turkish president.
So lots of madness to interpret there. First of all, it's okay, hopefully it'll be strongly done. What will be strongly done? And what does it mean to do it strongly in this context? I would presume doing it strongly actually would mean that there would be more inhumane actions taken rolling through Kurdish territory. Okay, and now, but my favorite part was, he said, somebody said today, in other words, they briefed him for the first time, Kurds and Turks are enemies. And he's like, oh, they're natural enemies, I found out today. Somebody said today. You might have wanted to find that out yesterday. Before you made the decision about letting Turks roll into Kurdish territory? That would be a relevant fact to know before you made that impulsive decision, based on God knows what incentives you had.
Donald Trump talks about international relations the way I talk about sports, where once I learn something new, I'm like so proud of myself.
Totally,
and I really
right.
emphasize it, right? Like, oh, Kershaw is a 5-tool player. I don't even know if that's true, but that's like the way that I would say it because I don't know anything about sports. Trump knows nothing about foreign policy, about domestic policy, about anything. I mean, he's infamous for refusing intel, right? For refusing briefings on foreign relations. Like, it's out of control.
What Anna's referring to, there's a lot of things that Anna's referring to, but the one that sticks out the most is when he was going to meet with North Korea. And they said, well, do you know North Korea? There's this very important background context to the story. He's like, no, I don't need to know that. He said that he would know whether they have a deal. By the way, well, what would be in the deal? Anyway, whether they were gonna have a deal within 1 second of meeting Kim Jong-un.
By the way, North Korea has essentially given up. There is no deal. They have continued testing their missiles. They will continue, as they have been, developing their nuclear weapons. Donald Trump doesn't know anything. He's unprepared, ill-prepared, has no knowledge on these issues, has no curiosity about these issues. He has simply used his position of political power to enrich himself and his family. That's all he cares about.
And so look, the relationship between Turks and Kurds are far more complicated than their natural enemies because they live in the same country and a lot of Turks have partly Turkish blood in them. And so some Kurdish folks have risen up all the way to prime minister in Turkey. And so it's not just that they're enemies, they're also friends and allies and neighbors. But yes, they have a conflict in southeastern Turkey, okay? So now, but guys, if you're MAGA, I mean, I don't know, there's no talking with them, right? Are you proud that your president is an idiot who didn't know any of the relationship between Turkey and the Kurds before he blundered into a call with the leader of Turkey and promised to let them roll into Kurdish territory? Do you think that that's good foreign policy when the President of the United States doesn't know what he's talking about and finds out afterwards, oh, I let you take Kurdish territory. It turns out, I found out today they are natural enemies, but I let them do it anyway.
Yeah.
That's a relevant fact. How could you not think that's a relevant fact? Unless, again, if you're a Trump follower, you revel in how stupid you are. So there's no language where we could communicate to you in a way that it would break through to you.
So one final video from this press conference, and this is an important one to show you because Trump is confronted by the GOP critics in response to his decision to pull the troops out. Take a look.
Mr. President, a number of Republicans, including Nikki Haley and Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, were very critical of this decision today. Mitch McConnell put out a statement saying he wished he would exercise leadership and reconsider, and suggested not doing so would be reminiscent of what the Obama administration would do.
I have great respect for all of the people that you named, and they have their opinion, and a lot of people do. And I could also name many more than you just named of people that totally are supportive. You see the names coming out. People are extremely thrilled because they say it's time to bring our people back home. We're not a police force. They're policing the area. We're not a police force.
Okay, but this isn't about policing that area. It's about following through on the promises that were made to Kurdish allies that helped us fight ISIS in Syria. So you can't just use groups of people, get what you want, and then turn your back on them, because that sets a terrible precedent. I mean, think about what could happen in the future if you need to work with allies abroad to, succeed in whatever objective, right? Hopefully it's not a shady objective where we meddle in other people's, situations, but you can't just renege on your allies like that. It sets a terrible precedent, and he's just gonna continue doubling down on it.
So last two things here. Look, we can't be, progressives agree, we can't be the policemen of the world or the Middle East. But if there was a progressive president and they asked me, which would be funny, although it makes sense. If they asked me, hey Cenk, should we just pull out right away and leave the Kurds to fend for themselves? I'd say, no, don't do that. Hold on, we made promises. Let's figure out what our promises were. Let's figure out what the Pentagon thinks is the right balance. That doesn't mean they're right, but let's have a conversation with them. Then let's talk to groups that care about Kurdish interests, Turkish interests. Let's be smart. Let's figure this thing out and come up with a holistic strategy instead of I called Erdoğan and it turns out they're natural enemies, but I let them invade. I mean, like, come on, what is this, right? I mean, it was somebody today on Twitter. I mean, it's funny, but they said Trump is starting to sound like Cenk's imitation of Trump.
Oh, totally.
Right, and one last thing. I know it's now minor, but
look at that smug picture.
I know. No, but that right there that's the definition of unearned confidence. That's what that looks like, right? Like a guy who doesn't know anything, but is so stupid he doesn't know anything. Looks like this. Okay. Anyway, so if you notice, he said there's a lot of tribal conflicts, right? And he said that on a couple of occasions in this press conference. Why is it that when there's conflicts in Northern Europe, which historically happened endlessly, there was endless wars in Northern Europe, right? Those are not tribal conflicts. When you're in the Middle East, it's a bunch of tribes, tribal conflicts. You have, I think Hitler was a warlord. You could have easily called him the worst warlord that ever existed, but he's not a warlord. But anybody that picks up a weapon in Afghanistan, warlord, okay? Yeah. So look, I know it probably doesn't crack the top 100 things that he's done that are racist, okay? But nonetheless, and he's not the only one that does it, but anytime that it's like, oh, the Middle East, bunch of tribes there.
Yeah, Turkey's a tribe, right?
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.